Well, authorities in Norway are defending the actions of two cruise ship security guards that were forced to kill a polar bear that attacked and then injured the crew. Critics, however, say that the ship should never have been there in the first place. And for more on this story, I'm joined now by animal rights lawyer Camille Labchuk. Camille, nice to see you as always. And let's just start, if we could, with polar bears as a species. Just how vulnerable are they?
Well, Jeff, there's only about 25,000 of them left in the wild, and we know that they only live in this one area of the world, which of course is the Arctic. They're listed by CITES as a species that is at risk of becoming threatened or endangered or extinct. And that's certainly concerning that we're essentially invading their territory and that incidents like this are still happening.
Yeah, you say invading their territory. This kind of wildlife tourism, just how common is it, Camille, allowing passengers on a cruise ship to encroach upon the habitat of a endangered or vulnerable species?
Well, I think, Jeff, that it's a real concern, and we all like to think of ecotourism as something beneficial to the environment, beneficial to animals, that lets people view animals in their natural habitat rather than hunting them or exploiting them in zoos or aquariums. But the problem comes when we get too close to them and when we go into these areas where it's inappropriate for us to be there because it puts them at risk. And that's exactly what we saw in this situation. The Norwegian government tells people to stay away from this area and that it's quite dangerous and infested with polar bears. So the fact that people are landing and walking onto these islands where they know polar bears are going to be and they know there's a risk, that's really troubling to me.
Yeah, so there's some hard questions need to be asked, not only of the security personnel who killed this bear, but the tour company itself. Why were they even there to begin with?
I think that's the biggest question. You know, certainly an act of self-defense can be somewhat excusable or understandable, but the fact that this cruise ship is going there in the first place, putting guests at risk, putting security guards at risk, and certainly putting the polar bears at risk, as we've seen, you know, now we have one who's dead. I think that raises some real questions and perhaps should prompt a rethink of whether this is actually beneficial ecotourism.
Just had a look at that polar bear, the photo that has since gone viral in the last day or two, Camille. And do you think that the death of this polar bear and the strong backlash online, is that going to make a difference in this case? Are tour operators going to hear that?
I really hope that it will, and I hope, first of all, that it will prompt people to reconsider whether they should go on these types of Arctic cruises that might involve invading polar bears' territory. And that if they do want to see the Arctic, which I think is a beautiful thing if you can afford to do so, then perhaps choose a company that doesn't get so close to polar bears, look for cruises that don't end up in these situations where polar bears could end up dead.
Just finally, do you think that we need laws or stricter penalties, something to protect polar bears and other vulnerable species?
Absolutely. And Jeff, what I can tell you is that the state of animal protection law in Canada and certainly around the world is abysmal. We often assume as compassionate people that there are laws to protect animals from situations like this, but typically that's not the case. So I think that some legal mechanisms taken by government would go a long way to protecting bears from situations like this in the future.
All right, animal rights lawyer Camille Labchuk with us this morning. Camille, thanks as always.